Over to Richard Jensen, who will be introducing Barbara Radtke. On the table, you'll see a handy little brochure which lists out all of the services that eTeaching provides. And as you're preparing for your spring semester courses, I highly encourage you to contact us and utilize the number of services that we offer. We also just posted our spring workshop schedule on our homepage. So it's right on the front of our homepage. Our workshops will start in about a week or so and go through the middle of December through the beginning of the spring semester. So if you have any questions, our contact information is on the brochure. So I encourage you to contact us. And I'll turn it over to Richard, who is a faculty member in the math department and one of the faculty moderators for the FMRC.
Thank you, Jeannie. I've been introducing these eTeaching luncheons with mixed success. Frequently I Google the person that I'm supposed to introduce, and the last couple of times I got it wrong. Today when I was Googling C21, have you ever Googled C21?
Yes.
C21, Century 21 Realty comes up like crazy. So,
I'm in the sky with my orange jacket.
I'm pleased to introduce Barbara Radtke, who is a part-time faculty member in the School of Theology and Ministry. Barbara got her PhD here, and she is now the program manager, I think. So excuse me, program manager for something called C21 Online that grew out of the scandals in the early part of the century and was promoted to this online course that is available throughout the world. There are over 70 countries now that subscribe to courses from C21 Online. I'll let Barbara tell you more about it, but we're very happy to have her and her program today. Thank you very much, Barbara.
Well, thanks very much to IDES for inviting me to be here, and thank you for coming. And I'm glad you didn't have to come through windswept and rain to get here. And let me begin by talking a little bit about the history of, just to give you a thumbnail sketch. And then we'll actually get into what the learning resources look like. And if I could just ask, has anybody here taken a C21 Online course? Because it's possible, we always, every semester, have some people who are in the course. Okay, has anybody here used Blackboard Vista and know what a regular site looks like? Okay, that will change how much time I spend there. So we were established in 2004. We recently celebrated our 5th anniversary. I caught myself saying last week that we were 5.5, which shows we're a young program because we're still mentioning half years. 2 years after the clergy sexual abuse crisis broke, BC had already begun the C21, or Church in the 21st Century initiative. We began. During the initial time period, of the things that were happening on campus between 2002 and 2004, there were requests from BC alums who were not in the Boston area. Could anything be done for them? And so in 2004, when the Church in the 21st Century initiative became permanent, the response in terms of establishing it permanently was to establish the Church in the 21st Century Center, and also to begin C21 Online, or Church in the 21st Century Online. You can see why we shortened it, to say that all the time as a mouthful. So although we're independent, and we have been independent of C21 Center, we share the same name and we work really closely together. And we also began housed with the Institute of Religious Ed and Pastoral Ministry and worked very closely in cooperation with them. As a matter of fact, our first logo said C21 Online in cooperation with IRE Camp. And when the School of Theology and Ministry was founded, which is only 2 years ago, we were one of its founding entities with IREPM and Weston Digital. So that brings you up to date in terms of the thumbnail. Do I need this, or can you hear me? Okay, all right. Then I'm going to whip it a little bit farther away so that we're not getting half amplified and half not. So I'm just going to run you through a couple of demographics before I show you what a resource looks like and what we're really getting out of using distance technology to bring people together to talk about matters of faith and life. We went from that first year having one learning opportunity to 23 courses and mini courses, and I'll explain in a minute what the difference between those are. There's a broad selection of topics that have to do with spiritual renewal. At your place, there's a handout, and rather than list them and spend time, this is what's coming up in the next semester, and you can also find those on our website with the other courses that we offer. But it's a broad array of everything from parenting courses, helping people do religious education in their homes, to spirituality in the second half of life. That was a course we just launched this semester and was very popular. We called it Autumn Blessings, and it opened in autumn. The growth to this robust curriculum happens because we, over the 5 years, have had several grants from anonymous foundations or foundations that want to remain anonymous to about $200,000. So that's where we have gotten our development boost from. We launched our first learning resource in Spanish last spring, and again increased the number of countries because South America and Latin America, Central America kicked in. We've had over 30,000 persons use our learning opportunities, and I'll explain which ones are the most popular and which ones we have a more small enrollment in. And actually, most of those are free opportunities. The ratio runs about 1 in 10. For every 10 people that use our free opportunities, one person comes on, registers, and uses our courses. But I think it shows the potential for our growth, and we have been growing every year, as you can see. Even in the recession, last year we increased 36%, and that is in our registration for our courses. And this year we're on track for about a 25% increase. So, C21 Online has global reach. I was listening when Richard said 70 countries and thinking, I have to find where that isn't updated. We have 130 countries and territories represented, and all 50 states in the United States and Washington, D.C. Wyoming was a holdout. I almost drove to Wyoming myself and hooked up there in order to be able to sign on, but somebody did it before I got there. Participants in our courses with discussion are mostly, obviously, from English-speaking countries because the discussion happens in English. Overwhelmingly, it's from the U.S. It is true, I don't know if you know, that when you have click and brick organizations, which we do because people know BC here, it is brick and mortar, and then are getting to know us online, you do get most of your people who are within driving distance of the area, who have seen it, who are assured it's a real, reliable place, right? But the other users are California, and it's not so much that California is what I would call advanced in doing this kind of work, although technology certainly was born there and grew there. But the churches have been very advanced in California to try to use technology to train their volunteers. And so we have relationships with the Archdiocese of San Francisco and with several schools in San Jose in order to help prepare their teachers and other ministers. But we also hear from Canada, from Australia, from the UK, from Ireland. The weaker the dollar gets against the euro, the more European participants we get. It's just a fact of the economy. So, to tell you a little bit now about these experiences that I've been speaking about, we have two, essentially, the mini course and the regular courses and workshops. So let me tell you about the mini course. First, we have developed and available 3 mini courses. The one we're going to look at shortly is called The Birth of Jesus. I thought it fit in with the season. Actually, the first one we developed was called The Death of Jesus. And because of the popularity of both of these, we decided to try to translate The Death of Jesus into Spanish. And I see I left off an accent there, my apologies. And that launched in spring, and actually we've had over 3,000 users of La Muerte de Jesus. Here are the characteristics of a mini course. First, they're free to the public. And second, they're open 24/7, 365 days of the year. We have an analytic that's on our 3 mini courses, and we find out that they're used almost around the clock and daily. Because they can drop in whenever they want to, there is no participant interaction in mini courses, but there is interaction with the content, and I'll show you how that happens in a minute. And the purpose of them for the user or for the participant, or we call them visitors because they drop in all the time, so is to assist the visitor in their local community. And I'm going to give you some examples of some feedback we have of actually what has happened. But first, let me go up here and let me take you right to the birth of Jesus, and hope I can get back to this presentation. Okay, so this is a little bit of, aren't we happy that Java-D is available? Okay, so this is what our mini course would look like. It's a little bit expanded here in terms of the size on the page. And it was developed also with the Center for Christian Jewish Learning. We try to find partners in terms of our development. And I just wanted to show you how this works. We're going to go in and we're going to take a look at the Gospel of Matthew's infancy narrative. Okay? Let me just scroll down here because I want to point out something about this picture which I'm going to use later. This, as I said, is our latest mini course that we've done. We're working on a new one on preaching that we hope will be out this year. What we incorporated here, the first mini course has auditory and has reading. And so we incorporated some visuals here too to try them, and it was very successful. So this picture on the left of your screen are just some creche figures that have been moved around. But they actually depict Matthew's narrative, because in Matthew is where you hear about the 3 kings coming to give their gifts. Now, you probably also remember that the shepherds came, and probably if you have seen a Christmas creche or you have one, you probably get it with the shepherds and the 3 kings. And if you're like our household, you put them all together. But the 2 narratives are different. So we decided to use those as a visual cue to help people remember what comes from Luke and what comes from Matthew. And I'll show you how we do that in a minute. All right, now if we go beyond this, first, we even provide the reading. People don't even need a Bible. We have a link to something that is on the U.S. Catholic Bishop's site. They have a Bible by chapter, and we use that. And then we would move on, and let's just see the structure. Each of these are only a few seconds, so I'm actually going to play this through. Maybe this is a minute. This is like rolling around. You know, I'm living proof when I do something live that anybody can be involved with this work. Because it doesn't take any particular talent, because obviously I'm not that talented.
The structure of Matthew's infancy narrative can be outlined in these 4 sections.
No, can you hear that, or is that just...
A genealogy of Jesus, 3 groups of 14 generations. 2, the Annunciation to Joseph in an angelic dream message that Jesus was conceived through the Holy Spirit. 3, the homage of the Magi to the newborn King of the Jews. And 4, the escape from Herod the Great and resettlement in Nazareth. Included in Matthew's narrative are 5 fulfillment passages, which establish that Jesus is rooted in Israel's story.
Okay, now, I don't know if you recognize that voice. That is Phil Cunningham, who was here at one time as director of the Center for Christian Jewish Learning, and he wrote this for us and actually did the voiceover. So as you can see from here, in the navigation on the left, we have all those different 4 parts represented, and people can go in, they can do them step by step, or they can do whichever one they're interested in, and they can return to them. And that's what we find. The 30,000 people are one-time users, new visitors. Then we have repeat visits that are a lot larger than that, because people do come back and use them again. Okay, so let me see. From here, I wanted to just click and show you how they interact with the material. And rather than use this one, since we hadn't heard the whole narrative, let's go to the general conclusion and look at that self-check. Now, people report to me that they do this self-check. They print it off and they get credit for it. Some high school kids do, okay, as extra credit projects. And some people who are looking to clock certain hours or certain competencies. All right, now here's an example of a self-check. Compare the 2 photos and choose the most accurate statement in reference to the gospel accounts. And then you get some choices down here. All right, and you can tell that the one on the left is the one we saw because we looked at Matthew. And the one on the right is the representation we had from Luke. And so the answer to this is that the photo with the shepherds, etc., belongs to Luke, and the photo with the Magi belong to Matthew. And if you're correct, you get the correct answer. You get correct as a response. You've probably seen these in a number of ways. If you don't click on the right one, it gives you the information for what the right one is. Now, that we had reports back that is why some teachers do use this with upper level students. You know, I'm sure that because we have both voice and words visually, that many people are using this throughout the world in order to practice their English. But, you know, that's okay with us. And so I think that when it comes to this self-check, it's more used by the people who are really actually trying to use it in order to learn something, in order to move on in their own work in their local community. And that could be a scripture study group in a parish. We've got emails from them saying they used it and they used it as the basis of discussion. We have gotten it from priests who say this is a great reminder for in a fast way, instead of looking up book commentaries, to think about our homiling and how it applies. And while I was putting these examples together, just yesterday, we got a response from someone. They have to elect to write into us, and it was a man who was from Ireland. He's a Jesuit. He's on his way to a 2-month visit to Rwanda, and the purpose is to help people with scripture study. And he said, this is ideal, this is just what I'm looking for. We're going to use this, and we're going to use the print-friendly printout that we did with this last version. Thank you, Tim. Tim Lindgren arranged for that printout version, and it's being used. Okay, so now to show you our next kind of, whoops. I can just get out of this way. Okay, the next thing I want to do is talk about our courses and our workshops. And those are the majority of things that you have listed on that white sheet. The little gold bookmark really has Birth of Jesus and Death of Jesus on the back of it. If you wanted to remember that or hand that on or give that to someone. The only difference between a workshop and a course is the length of time. We call our workshops 2-week experiences, or our 2-week experiences workshops, and our 4- and 6-week experiences we call a course. For this, you need to register, you need to show up in a certain time period, a 2-week time period, a 6-week time period, and there is a fee required to enroll. The maximum fee is $75, and if people bring a group, we give them a discount. We use a password-protected site on Blackboard Vista, which is why I asked you if you were familiar with that, and I'm going to show you the site in a minute. The other production, Birth of Jesus, is done in Drupal that can be put on the public site. So our courses are asynchronous, and they're available 24/7, and you don't need to show up at any particular time, but they're only available for the length of the course. We close them, and then eventually we put them to bed. Each week we provide a resource, which can be a video and a reading, or a video or a reading. And we also provide questions for reflection and discussion, and that organizes our discussion group. We do have a town meeting area where they can socialize as much as they want to. Then when we're in the work for the week, we have a moderator in there, a facilitator who is experienced, works with that asynchronous discussion. And the purpose of this is to assist the participant in their local community, but it's also to expand the horizon of the person taking the course by being able to dialogue with persons in other regions and other countries, and people they wouldn't be in touch with if they just came to their local community, faith community. Okay. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually show you one of our sites and just show you how it worked, and then give you a few anecdotes. Okay, so here is the Blackboard Vista site and what it would look like. And you know, we keep it really simple. First of all, we still have people who come to us trying to use dial-up. And so we also have an older participant that has more leisure time and wants to pursue things but does not have the latest equipment. And so we decided that we would try to keep it simple. So as far as technologically, probably the one thing we've done here is we've customized the icons. But this site starts out just like your site starts out. And we always try to keep it looking the same way. We always have a notebook where the course material is, a Blackboard orientation which we take off into the second week of the course. We put it on the menu. Our community for conversation is where people go to have their discussions. And then we have an evaluation. I just put all 4 of them up there so you could see them all at the same time. So let me just show you a little bit about, it's actually very, very simple what we're trying to do here in terms of our presentation. Because our goal is to engage people as deeply as we can in conversation and dialogue so they can reinvest what they learn back in their local communities. That's what we want to do. We have built up a very, very strong core of loyal users or participants who come back to us time and time again, but they're very active also locally. So here would be an example of our schedule at a glance. And you'll see in this particular course that we have both links to writings, which would, again, this course was co-created by Phil Cunningham and Mike Hines, right? And so this alternates. Sometimes we have together a video and a resource, but this alternates the resource. This would be like a 12-page paper that they actually take off and they copy and read if they don't want to read it online. These, by the way, are circulating all through Canada because some generous person gave it to her diocese. But we don't mind, because then they hear about us that way. And we actually, in these papers, put our at first we didn't do it, we just paginated, and now we put our logo and address on it so people can find us. All right, and then we have video. You can see we're still designing it for dial-up, although dial-up people are having more and more difficult problems. So we're creating workshops that only have reading to them and don't have video. And that's our next approach. But this, I'll give you a little glimpse of Michael. This is a half hour. We won't show the whole half hour, of course. Oops. We license this. Sometimes we create them ourselves. And most times we use them from C21 presentations who have happened here. Which you can see we're having a half hour with Michael Hines, also talking about the same material. And then the core of what happens when people use those resources is in this community for conversation. There are links that go to each one of these discussions, but just to give you an example, there were 15 people in this course. I'm sure you've seen this discussion boards before. You can see the kind of responses we're getting. We have a facilitator who's in there too. The facilitator for this one is John McGinty. And you can see what he does is he posts all the questions, 1 through 5, to kind of organize the discussion. And then you can see that somebody's thinking, that Jerome Holzman is thinking, well, this really goes outside of question 5, and so I'm going to start a new thread. So, that is as simple as what we do. We have a certificate of active participation if people are online and stay involved in the discussion, because that's what we are trying to encourage them to do. Now, to give you a taste of sort of how this assists the person locally and then also assists the person regionally, I have a few examples. Is it okay for me to just give them and then we can do some Q&A if people are interested? People bringing things back to the community. I'm going to use the example of teaching religion because the Teaching Religion Elementary School is the course that I facilitate most myself. And so I'm in there and I read all the posts, and I am remembering this morning the exchanges. 2 years ago, when the course first launched, an entire school, K through 8, came online with us, 9 of their teachers from Albuquerque. And it was also during Lent, and so the teachers were talking about what they were doing in their classrooms ordinarily and what they were doing for that season. And by the time the course was over, the first thing I noticed is that they weren't using their textbook teacher manuals very well. And the second thing I noticed is that they were very low on practices that they could introduce to the children during that time. And the course was ideally designed for that, starting with experience, introducing a resource, and then talking about what this means for your practice. By the end of the course, it was the second week of Lent, and I was just amazed at both how people talking online with other people throughout the country, getting ideas, and then going back to their school and recording how they had changed their teaching within those 4 weeks. And what I noticed most, because probably it was most immediate, how they had changed to age-appropriate practices for the children, which I thought was a great way for the school to invest in their own school and in their own teaching. There also, in that course, was an individual student who had a very compelling introduction. She introduced herself as being a product of Catholic schooling until she went to college. Then she went to a private college. Now, how do I get that off there? Good. Then she went to a public college. She's certified to teach. She comes back to her hometown. She goes to a public school, and she feels that this is not the right placement for her. So she decides that she's going to change her job, and she gets a job of her dreams, teaching at a local Catholic school, 2nd grade. And she gets in the 2nd grade. For those of you who may not be Roman Catholic, that's also the sacrament preparation grade. And to her horror, what she hates to do most is teach religion. Right? So she came in with this is how she introduced herself. And so the first week she was so enthusiastic, and then the second week and the third week, I could see because of the tracking device that she was coming online, but she wasn't talking at all. She was obviously digesting what she was hearing and what she was reading. And she came on the fourth week, and said, I know I haven't been in the discussion very often, but I've been talking with my students about what their experience is, and that's where I'm going to start in applying the curriculum. And that was an exciting thing to me also. Now let me talk about just a couple of examples of expanding your horizons due to regions. First of all, I'm here to report that parents in Ireland and parents in the U.S. who talk together in the parenting course have found that all of their teenagers do not like to go to Mass. And so but you know, that was kind of a comfort to them, to find out that it wasn't just them, it wasn't just hearsay, that it was even cross-cultural. Second is an example I have of very early, one of the first courses we did was and is called What Makes Us Catholic, and it's about Catholic identity. And a woman locally wrote in, and it was right around the time that all of the church mergers were happening here, that Roman Catholic Church parishes were merging. And she wrote very bitterly about how she had to travel an extra 2 miles in order to get to Mass on Sunday. And this person from Salt Lake City responded to her and said, I drive 45 miles to get to church every Sunday. And so the woman from Massachusetts wrote back and said, I guess I don't have that much of a complaint. Now this is where I think the example of a facilitator comes in. Because the facilitator wrote then in this conversation thread, do you think it's the distance you're traveling that's really what is distressing you? And the person didn't answer for a couple of days, and she came back and she said, no, it really isn't the distance, although that's what I've been talking about. It's that I'm having to reform my community. Of course, everybody said, yes, that's it. But the point is that having the facilitation brought her more deeply to understand where she needed to focus and how she needed to talk about it to people who could make a difference about that. Right, the third thing is kind of lighthearted, and I'll end on that experience. We have worked since the very beginning with the Diocese of Fairbanks. And the first conversation I had with the diocesan person from Fairbanks, she was telling me how she was going to invite people to enroll. And she said, this course at this time of the year, I'm going to have them in the road parishes. And this other course at this other time of the year, I'm going to invite the other catechists. And she kept talking about road parishes. And I thought, I have a doctorate in ecclesiology. I don't know what a road parish is. So I said to her, what is a road parish? She said, those are the communities I can get to by road. The rest I fly in by bush plane. Okay? So it expanded my horizon also, because it, of course, is not a technical ecclesiological term, but it's a reality for this person who has ministry duties in the bush. So why don't I stop there, and if there are any comments or questions or whatever, I'm happy to hear some discussion. If not, Jeannie, what do you have planned?
Well, let's open it up and see if anyone has any questions for.
Yes, Jim.
Barbara, is there any indication from the discussions that you see or any other way of how many non-Roman Catholics are plugging into this?
When people introduce that themselves, that is, it's their freedom to say that. There are other programs where people actually profile themselves and fill in religious affiliation. We have some people who are Episcopal who identify themselves, and we also have some people who are Lutheran and United Church of Christ, who particularly like the scripture courses. But it's not a large majority. We are entrepreneurial, so we market, and we're marketing mostly to Catholic venues. There are some courses, actually, there's been a couple of people who are married to Catholics who have taken Why Be Catholic? Yes?
Can you give us a sense of, let's even just take that first one, like the birth of Jesus, a rough timetable of how long it took, roughly how much person hours it took, who was part of the team in terms of titles and functions, and fourth, budget, money, cost,
Yeah.
development cost.
Tim, Tim, you want to help me out here? Like, you're on the other side of it, okay? In terms of time, length of time, one of the things that's difficult with this is that this has gone through several iterations of where we house it, so we've changed it a couple of times.
I'm thinking of like the first.
Okay, so the first time, we do pay the content expert to develop it, unless we have it in existence. And then we had to find the format to place it in. So you have to give the content expert, let me talk about just timing first. You have to give them some time. And I would say, you need to negotiate with the person, but it's going to be at least 6 months. If you're getting anybody to fit the responsibility into the rest of their responsibilities. And then after we have that, the other people, this was a good one to consider because we also used a photographer who is associated with MTS. So he did the photography, and so that was in-house. And then I was working with Tim Lindgren from IDES, who it was orchestrating how it could be put online, the best way to be put online, and creating the templates for that. So in the other one we had artwork, so we worked with an artist, and we paid that artist. So maybe, Tim, take it from here in terms of the amount of time to develop the template.
Well, it's hard to put a number on it, and I think because it's gone through several phases, it's all blurred together now for me over the years. And I think we started off with the technologies we had at hand, and we kind of shoehorned things into Blackboard, or at that point WebCT for a while, which was not the best experience, I think, but it got us started, and then we played around with some other quiz tools, and then we moved into another platform where we could sort of have all the sites in one place, and it would be easier for Barbara to go in and make changes to it. And we started off with one way of converting Phil's PowerPoint. He would record his over PowerPoint, and then we'd convert those into a kind of little video that we'd embed, and we changed the format to Flash eventually. So it's kind of an ongoing thing, but I mean, I think about 6 months for the whole sort of start to finish, maybe for I'm trying to think of the last one we did with the Spanish version. We had the structure, but we had a lot of content to work with, and I think the majority of the time is spent really on the content and getting the content right and making sure that it's proofread and everything's working okay, and I think that's often ends up being the bulk of it now, since we have a kind of a template in place.
So you see, in terms of the people involved, that we're working outside of C21. We're working with a theological expert, and we're working with an instructional designer, and then any specialist that needs to be brought in for that. In terms of funding, it's hard. It's hard again for me to say. What I usually start with in thinking about designing a course is, or a learning resource, is I start with the idea that it could take up to $2,500. And we have done the last one, Autumn Blessings, with the reuse of the things that we had, and we had people purchase a book, which turned out perfectly suitable for the material. We try to keep it under like $12 for them to purchase it. I did that course for almost my own time. I don't think that there was one invoice out of that course besides it. So it's hard for me to say too, but when I think about development money, that's what I think. Now, if you go out there and you talk to other people, they'll tell you, to produce something is even more expensive, but we have a lot of support services here to help us. And then also it depends if you're going to reuse something that's already done here. If you have a conference and you want to reuse the material from the conference, then that's really different than starting from scratch. Was that all 4 parts?
I think that was.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right. Yeah, Richard.
Can you talk about your course catalog? You made mention of putting a course to bed.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you have every course available all the time? I know that you have
Yeah.
these scheduled things, I
Yeah.
know that. But do you ever sort of put a course on the shelf for 2 years? Or say, this one has outlived its usefulness? I know that it's very young, so maybe this question is a little...
I think of it like the Disney Vault. You know, because what I think about is people have, and there's 2 of them right now, Women Envisioning Church. It was based on a workshop that was from 2003 or 2004, and our Parents Handing on the Faith. The book we use for that is going out in print, and so, but the Parents Handing on the Faith title is a good title, and people write and ask for it. So what we do is my intention, and this is the first time we've done this, is to talk. I pulled it off last year, and then I'm putting it back on this year, and it's renewed. You know, just like it comes back out of the Disney Vault, and it has enhanced color, and so then Mom and Dad buy it all over again.
You're gonna do it next week?
Yeah.
Put it on Blu-ray.
Okay. So anyway, but that's a good question. We also are a little short-handed, but I also have a plan, which we've done in its first cycle, of choosing a course that's going to go offline for a while and doing an extended survey of people who took that course a while ago, asking what they remember, what was memorable, how their practices have changed. A lot of our own criteria is how people have changed, report that they changed their practices. And then using that as a guideline for renewal. And Rich Howley in MTS was spearheaded the sort of pilot of that for us in one of our courses, and it was very successful and we learned a lot. So we intend to do that again. But you're absolutely right, you got to keep them fresh. Also, this is we have competitors, and it's a very, it's a market where people go where their current interests are. So you have to be very agile in terms of always having new and fresh titles.
Do you have any intention to aim this at school children? Or something aimed towards school children?
Yeah, not now. Not, no. And, you know, how are we doing on time? Can I extend that answer? You know, I think that even for high school children, I think that the people who are using the mini courses who report that they're high schoolers, that that works okay for them, but a longer kind of learning experience, it would have to be structured differently. A younger person is used to and almost demands a very different kind of learning experience. It's a busier screen, more things going on, more choices. And so it's not that our content would change, but we would really have to represent, I think, how we were looking at things.
More Disney-ish.
Well, more Busted Halo. Busted Halo is one of the ones that I look at in terms of what's going on. That's aimed at what they call the person in mid-20s to mid-30s. And those screens for some of our users would be very confusing. I know because I get the calls from people who say, I can't find the notebook. And you know, there's 4 things up there and they can't find the notebook. And I understand it, because when I look at something for the first time, I feel confused. It's not, I'm not criticizing that person, but it's very different than someone who has been told on Facebook to go in and look for something on a site and they find it. It's just a different kind of way that people are used to using media.
So I think we have time for one more question. I'm just curious on these mini, the self-guide, self-paced ones. Do they, are the process of people getting linked in, do they email you and then you have them?
No, they're right there. You just go to that website address, or bc.edu/ C21 Online, and it's right on our front page, and also there's an individual page for all of them also.
So is that not Blackboard Vista?
No, it's not.
It's separate.
Right now, they're currently all in Drupal, right? Yeah.
It's just an open source platform that we use for a variety of sites.
And then the other courses are done within Blackboard?
The other courses are done within the Blackboard.
How many do you normally have enrolled in those courses at any one time?
Well, it can really vary. We just had the schools, we just ran a separate course that you would not, as somebody coming to our site, even have seen on our calendar for 106 Catholic school elementary teachers in Norwich. So that would be big, and we would have 4 sections of that running at the same time. But then the course, the synoptics that we looked at had 15 this year. Sometimes that can have, our Advent workshop was out of sight. We had to close it early because I didn't have another facilitator to bring in when we reached 75. And so we're running 3 sections of that. And we probably could have put in a 4th section if we left it open till the day it started. We find that for 25 is good because not everybody likes to talk. If you're used to running a discussion for students where they're getting graded for their participation for discussion, so they have to respond so many times, I think 25 is a little bit too high. But for us, no matter how much we invite people, they don't want to get in the discussion.
Some people don't. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully Barbara's presentation has generated a lot of questions and ideas for you to take back to your own departments. And if there's any way that eTeaching can assist you, please feel free to contact us. Again, our information is right on the brochure, and we'd be happy to sit down and talk with you to see what your needs are.